Go. Curtsy to Lord Hemsley before someone else does.
Good evening, my lord.
I am flattered.
You're not Lord Hemsley.
You're the first who managed it by mistake.
Sweat trickled down the small of her back, trapped beneath layers of stiff silk. Her mother had pointed toward the wealthy lord by the pillar, but the room was spinning from cheap champagne. She dropped into a desperate curtsy. When she looked up, the wrong man smiled back. Beatrice's left heel was bleeding. She could feel the damp, sticky friction against the stiff leather of her slipper with every step she took across the parquet floor. Above her, 300 beeswax candles burned in a monstrous crystal chandelier, dripping an invisible, suffocating heat down onto the crush of bodies below. The ballroom smelled of wilting roses, damp wool, and the sour tang of nervous sweat masked by heavy lavender water. "He is by the far pillar, the one with the hideous gilded cherubs," her mother hissed, her fingers digging a sharp crescent into Beatrice's bicep. "Navy velvet coat. Lord Hemsley. He is looking for a wife who is quiet and grateful. Try to be both, for God's sake." Beatrice didn't nod. She just stared at the shifting mass of silk and broadcloth ahead of her. She was 25. In this room, that made her a rotting carcass, circled by the few vultures desperate enough to settle for a dowry that barely covered a gambling debt. She didn't want Hemsley. She had seen him earlier, chewing on a piece of salted beef with his mouth open, his chin glistening with grease. But her father's creditors were circling, and Beatrice was the only asset left to liquidate. "Go." Her mother shoved her slightly. Beatrice went. The crowd was a solid wall of elbows and bustles. She navigated it with the blunt precision of a butcher breaking down a carcass, murmuring flat apologies when her shoulder clipped an elderly dowager. Her corset was laced too tight over her ribs. Every breath felt like swallowing crushed glass. She kept her eyes pinned to the floor, tracking the shiny black boots of the men, looking for the specific scuff of navy velvet her mother had described. There, standing perfectly still near the grotesque cherub pillar, a navy velvet coat, broad shoulders. Beatrice didn't look up at his face. If she looked at his face, she might vomit, or worse, turn around and walk out the front doors into the freezing London rain. She needed momentum. She stepped into his peripheral vision, planted her bleeding left foot, and sank into a deep, agonizing curtsy. The silk of her gown pooled around her on the floor. The bones of her corset dug brutally into her pelvis. She held it for a beat, 2 beats, listening to the heavy thump of the orchestra, tuning their strings. "I am flattered," a voice said. It was a dark voice, raspy, low, carrying the distinct scrape of a man who smoked too much tobacco. Hemsley had sounded like a squawking goose when he spoke to the host earlier. Beatrice snapped her head up. The man looking down at her was not Lord Hemsley. He was tall, too tall. His jaw was covered in a faint shadow of stubble, a severe violation of the evening's dress code. A thin, jagged scar cut through his left eyebrow, breaking the harsh line of it. His eyes were the color of dirty rain, and they were currently crinkled at the corners in naked, abrasive amusement. He was wearing navy velvet, yes, but it was cut sharper, darker. Beatrice froze, halfway up from her curtsy. Her thighs burned. "Beatrice. Beatrice. Beatrice. She started. Her throat was bone dry. "Careful," he murmured, reaching out. His hand clamped around her bare forearm. He didn't wear gloves. His palm was hot, rough with calluses, and his grip was iron hard. He hauled her upright with terrifying ease. "You were wobbling." It ruins the effect of such a profound show of respect. "You are not Lord Hemsley," she blurted out. "Thank Christ for that." The man let go of her arm, slipping his hand into his trouser pocket. He didn't step back. He stood far too close, crowding her in the narrow space between the pillar and a wilting potted fern. He smelled of cold air, bitter coffee, and starch. "Hemsley is currently in the card room," losing his estate to a French diplomat. I am Arthur. Beatrice stared at him. The social script completely deserted her. She was supposed to apologize, fake a laugh, and flee. Instead, she just felt a sudden, profound exhaustion. I curtsied to the wrong man, she stated, her voice entirely flat. You did. You didn't stop me. It was a very good curtsy. I wanted to see how low you could go before you tipped over. Anger, sharp and hot, spiked through her exhaustion. You are deeply ill-mannered, and you are attempting to trap a man who eats mutton, like a starving dog. Arthur tilted his head, his gaze dragging over her plain, unadorned gray silk dress, taking in her bare neck, the tense set of her shoulders. He didn't look at her like a woman. He looked at her like a puzzle he had just stumbled over in the dark. I'd say we both have our flaws. The orchestra is starting. Dance with me. It wasn't a request. I absolutely will not, Beatrice said, finally finding the presence of mind to step back. Arthur shifted his weight, blocking her exit. Your mother is standing by the punch bowl. She is watching us. If you walk away from me now, looking flushed and angry, she will assume you have caused a scandal and drag you out by your ear. If you dance with me, you buy yourself 15 minutes of peace. Your choice. Beatrice looked past his shoulder. He was right. Her mother's eyes were fixed on them, wide and predatory, clearly mistaking Arthur for Hemsley in the dim light. Fine, Beatrice snapped. Arthur offered his arm. She didn't take his hand gently. She shoved her hand into the crook of his elbow, feeling the hard muscle beneath the velvet. Try not to look like you're being led to the gallows, he muttered as he steered her toward the floor. I'll try, she replied, but my feet are bleeding, and I hate you. Arthur laughed. It was a short, barking sound that made several heads turn. We're going to get along brilliantly. The orchestra launched into a waltz. It was a chaotic, screeching start. The lead violinist clearly half drunk before they found a heavy, thumping rhythm. Arthur pulled her into the crush of dancers. He didn't observe the respectable distance required by society. His hand settled firmly on her waist, his thumb resting a fraction too high, pressing against the rigid boning of her corset. Beatrice stiffened, expecting to be trampled in the sweeping turns, but Arthur moved with brutal efficiency. He didn't glide, he carved a path. Other couples instinctively shrank back from his shoulders, giving them a wide berth. The air was suffocating here in the center of the room. Dust motes danced in the glare of the candlelight. You're limping, he said, staring down at the top of her head. It's nothing. It's a blister. On your left heel. You favored it on the second turn. Beatrice glared up at him. Do you routinely catalog the physical infirmities of your dance partners? Only the ones who look like they want to stab me with a dessert fork. His face was impassive, but his eyes were tracking the room, scanning the exits, the footmen, the dowagers. He looked bored. Deeply, fundamentally bored. Who are you? Beatrice. She didn't offer her surname. Just Beatrice. No title, no family crest to wave in my face. I'm a spinster on a bleeding foot, trying to secure a fat lord to pay my father's debts. I don't think my family crest is relevant at the moment. Arthur's grip on her waist tightened momentarily. The rhythm of the dance forced them closer. Beatrice could feel the heat radiating off his chest. It was uncomfortable, the sheer mass of him. He wasn't soft or perfumed like the other men in her circle. There was a rough, unpolished edge to him that set her teeth on edge. Why didn't you just point me toward the card room? She asked, her voice dropping underneath the swell of the cellos. When I curtsied, you could have just told me where Hemsley was. I was using you. Beatrice missed a step. Her heel ground into the floor, sending a sharp spike of pain up her calf. Arthur caught her weight seamlessly, hauling her back into the rhythm before anyone noticed. Excuse me? She hissed. Lady Thatcham was bearing down on me from the south corridor. She has 3 unmarried daughters, all of whom play the harp and smell like boiled cabbage. You stepped in front of me and dropped into a curtsy. It was the perfect shield. Lady Thatcham assumes I am occupied, and I am spared a conversation about harp strings. Beatrice let out a breath that was half laugh, half scoff. So, I am a barricade. A very effective one. You are insufferable. I am practical. The music swelled, reaching a frantic, dizzying peak. The heat in the room was becoming unbearable. Beatrice felt a drop of sweat slide down her temple. Her lungs strained against the tight lacing of her gown. She swayed slightly, the edges of her vision blurring, with a sudden wave of dizziness. Arthur noticed instantly. His hand shifted on her waist, pulling her flush against him. It was a scandalous breach of decorum, but she was too lightheaded to fight it. "You're going to faint," he said. It wasn't a question. I am not. The corset is just tight. Arthur didn't argue. He abruptly changed their trajectory, cutting straight across the floor, ignoring the indignant gasps of a couple he nearly shoved into a potted palm. He didn't ask her permission. He practically dragged her toward the heavy glass doors at the edge of the ballroom. He wrenched one open, shoved her through, and slammed it shut behind them. The silence was instantaneous, shocking in its absolute contrast to the chaotic roar of the ballroom. They were on a stone terrace. The air was freezing, sharp, with the smell of approaching rain and wet granite. Beatrice gasped, leaning forward, bracing her hands on her knees as she dragged the cold air into her burning lungs. The shock of the cold against her sweaty skin made her shiver violently. "Breathe," Arthur ordered. She heard the rasp of a match. She turned her head slightly. Arthur was leaning against the stone balustrade, sheltering a flame in his cupped hands. He lit a cigar, the tip flaring a bright, angry orange in the gloom. The thick smell of tobacco smoke filled the damp air. He didn't look at her. He looked out into the pitch-black garden. Beatrice straightened slowly, her spine popping. "You can't smoke out here. If someone comes out, let them." He blew a stream of pale smoke into the wind. "They'll leave." Beatrice wrapped her arms around her chest, trying to stop her teeth from chattering. "Who are you? Truly, Arthur isn't just Arthur." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small, battered silver flask. He unscrewed the cap and held it out to her. She stared at it. "Drink it. It'll stop the shivering." "I don't drink from strange men's flasks in the dark." "Beatrice," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any mocking. "Drink the damn whiskey." She hesitated, then snatched the flask from his hand. She tipped it back and took a cautious swallow. It was violently strong, burning a fiery path down her throat and hitting her empty stomach like a lit coal. She coughed, handing it back to him. "Arthur Pendelton," he said quietly, taking the flask. "Duke of Ashbourne." Beatrice stared at him. The cold air suddenly felt entirely inadequate to cool the heat flushing up her neck. Ashbourne. The Mad Duke. He had inherited the title 6 months ago, after his brother died in a riding accident. The rumors said he had been living in a dockside tavern, fighting bare-knuckle matches for coin, entirely estranged from the family. He had stripped the estate bare of its sycophants in a week, fired half the staff, and notoriously told the Prime Minister to go to hell during his first appearance in the House of Lords. He was ruin. He was a social grenade with the pin pulled out, and she had just curtsied to him and drank his whiskey. "You're Ashbourne," she whispered. Disappointed? He didn't look offended. He looked like he expected it. "Terrified," she admitted, the whiskey loosening her tongue. "If my mother knows I am out here with you, she will throw herself into the Thames." "Good. I'll help her find a deep spot." He took a long drag of his cigar. "Your father is in debt. It is none of your business. It is now. I am bored, Beatrice. This entire season is a suffocating exercise in idiocy. You are the first person I've met tonight who didn't try to flatter me or run away from me. He turned his head, finally looking at her. His gray eyes caught the faint light spilling from the ballroom windows. How much does your father owe? Beatrice took a step back, her heels screaming in protest. I am going inside. 20,000 pounds? Arthur guessed, his voice following her. 30? She grasped the brass handle of the terrace door. She pulled it open, the blast of hot, noisy air hitting her like a physical blow. She didn't look back at him. Good night, Your Grace. She slipped back into the suffocating crowd, the taste of cheap whiskey and expensive tobacco lingering on her tongue. Lord Hemsley smelled of stale gin and boiled onions. Beatrice stood rigidly by the punch bowl, a glass of warm, sickly sweet lemonade clutched in her hand, while Hemsley lectured her mother on the proper breeding of hunting hounds. He was a thick, damp man. Perspiration beaded on his upper lip, catching the candlelight, and his cravat was already limp with sweat, stained, a faint, dirty yellow at the knot. A bitch must be obedient, Hemsley said, his small, watery eyes sliding over Beatrice's shoulder, dropping heavily to her chest and staying there. A disobedient animal ruins the pack. I require quiet in my kennels, Lady Warren, and in my home. Oh, Beatrice is a mouse, my lord. A veritable mouse, her mother simpered, her voice pitched unnaturally high. She nudged Beatrice with a sharp elbow. Aren't you, dear? Beatrice looked at Hemsley's damp, fleshy mouth. She thought of the 30,000 pounds her father owed to men who broke kneecaps for sport. She thought of the peeling wallpaper in her bedroom, the cold grates in winter, the desperate, hollow-eyed look on her father's face when the mail arrived. I am very quiet, Beatrice managed. Her voice sounded thin, like cracking ice. Hemsley grunted. He reached out with a thick, ungloved hand and pinched the flesh of her bare upper arm. Not a caress, an appraisal, like he was checking a flank of beef at Smithfield Market. His fingers were slightly sticky. One. A bit scrawny, he assessed, wiping his fingers on his velvet coat, but wide hips. Good for bearing. You have all your teeth, I presume? Beatrice's jaw clamped shut so hard her teeth ached. She felt the sudden, violent urge to drive her glass of lemonade directly into his face. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic trapped bird throwing itself against the iron bars of her corset. She couldn't breathe. The air in the room was entirely consumed by the stench of onions and desperation. Across the room, standing by the entrance to the card room, was Arthur. He was leaning against the door frame, a fresh glass of amber liquid in his hand. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was watching her. Even from 50 feet away, through the dizzying swirl of dancers, she could feel the weight of his gaze. It wasn't pity. It was a dark, clinical curiosity. He was waiting to see if she would snap, or if she would fold herself into the tiny, obedient box. Hemsley demanded. I am a mouse, she thought, panic rising, bitter in her throat. I am a barricade. I am meat. Smile, Beatrice, her mother hissed under her breath. Hemsley leaned closer. His breath was a physical assault. I understand your father is in a bit of a tight spot, Miss Beatrice. I told him I might be willing to settle his accounts. Assuming, of course, the merchandise is satisfactory. Walk with me to the conservatory. It's too bright in here. He didn't offer his arm. He simply grabbed her elbow, his thick fingers digging into the bruise he had just made. Something inside Beatrice gave way. It wasn't a loud, dramatic snap. It was a quiet, absolute severance. The string holding the puppet up was cut. She didn't pull away. She planted her feet. Hemsley tugged, stumbled slightly when she didn't move, and turned back to her, a scowl wrinkling his damp forehead. "Come along, girl." "No," Beatrice said. The word was quiet, but it dropped like a stone into a still pond. Her mother gasped, a sharp intake of breath that sounded like a dying bellows. "I beg your pardon." Hemsley bristled, his face darkening to an ugly shade of plum. "I said no." Beatrice looked directly into his watery, outraged eyes. Her voice was entirely steady now. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow clarity. "I am not going to the conservatory with you, Lord Hemsley. I am not going to marry you. You smell like rotting vegetation. You eat like a starved pig, and I would rather freeze to death in a debtor's prison than let you touch me again. Let go of my arm." Silence crashed down on their little triangle by the punch bowl. A few heads turned. Hemsley dropped her arm as if it had caught fire. He sputtered, a shower of spit flying from his lips. You insolent little wretch. Your father is a beggar. I was doing you a charity." "Keep your charity," Beatrice said flatly. She turned on her heel. The sudden pivot tore the blister on her left foot completely open. A fresh wave of agony shot up her leg, but she didn't flinch. She kept her spine rigid, her chin up, and walked away. She didn't look at her mother, who was currently whimpering into a lace handkerchief. She didn't look at Arthur, though she felt his eyes tracking her every step. She just walked. She shoved past a cluster of shocked debutantes, navigated the outer rim of the waltz, and slipped through a heavy oak door that led to the private wings of the house. The library was dark, save for the dying embers in the massive stone fireplace. It smelled of ancient dust, dry paper, and cold ash. Beatrice locked the heavy door behind her and collapsed onto the nearest piece of furniture, a dark leather Chesterfield sofa. The leather was freezing. She didn't care. She leaned forward, gasping for air, her fingers trembling as she gripped the hem of her gray silk dress and hauled it up over her knees. Her left slipper was soaked through with blood. The dark stain had seeped into the white silk stocking, turning it a sticky, rust-colored brown. She groaned, digging her thumbs into the heel of the shoe and prying it off. The friction tore at the raw flesh. The tears pricked her eyes, not from the ruin of her family, not from the humiliation in the ballroom, but from the sheer, petty, overwhelming pain of a ruined foot. She pulled the stocking down, exposing the angry, weeping quarter-inch of torn skin. "Looks like butcher's work," Beatrice shrieked, scrambling backward on the leather sofa, clutching her dress to her chest. Arthur was sitting in a wingback chair by the fireplace, half swallowed by the shadows. He didn't move. He was entirely relaxed, one leg crossed over the other, his boots resting on the brass fender of the hearth. "How long have you been in here?" Beatrice gasped, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her breastbone. "Long enough to know you don't wear petticoats," he observed dryly. "Get out." "I can't. You locked the door." Arthur stood up. He walked slowly out of the shadows, the faint orange light of the embers catching the harsh angle of his jaw and the jagged scar through his eyebrow. He wasn't holding a drink anymore. He looked entirely sober and entirely dangerous. He stopped at the edge of the sofa, looking down at her bare foot. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a stark white linen handkerchief, and dropped it onto her lap. "Press that to it," he ordered, "before you bleed on your host's upholstery." Beatrice glared at him, but she took the linen. She pressed it against her heel, wincing as the fabric stuck to the wound. "You followed me." "I did. Why? To mock me. You saw what happened. You saw me ruin my entire life, my family's life, in the span of 30 seconds. Did you enjoy the show, Your Grace?" "It was the only honest thing I've seen all night," Arthur said. He sat down heavily on the sofa next to her. The cushions dipped under his weight, tilting her slightly toward him. "You called him a starved pig." "I did. It was an insult to pigs. They have far better table manners." Beatrice let out a ragged, ugly sound that was half sob, half laugh. She leaned her head back against the leather, staring at the dark plaster ceiling. I am ruined. My father will be arrested by Tuesday. We will lose the house, the furniture, everything. Yes, you will. Arthur didn't offer platitudes. He didn't tell her it would be all right. He stated the facts, with the brutal efficiency of a ledger. The grandfather clock in the corner of the library began to chime, heavy, echoing strikes. It was midnight. I need a wife, Arthur said. Beatrice turned her head slowly, looking at his profile. What? I need a wife, he repeated, not looking at her. He watched the dying embers in the grate. My mother is threatening to move back to London from Bath to manage my affairs. The Prime Minister is hinting that my title requires stability. I am drowning in invitations from desperate women who want to fix me, cure my madness, or just spend my money. It is exhausting. I am not going to fix you, Beatrice said, her voice numb. That. Exactly. Arthur finally turned to face her. His gray eyes were intense, stripping away the dark of the room. You don't want to fix me. You don't even like me. You curtsied to the wrong man, Beatrice. And then you drank my whiskey and told Hemsley to go to hell. You have a spine made of iron, and you hate this society as much as I do. Beatrice stared at him. The heat radiating off him was immense. The smell of cold air and tobacco was intoxicating in the dusty room. You are offering me a business arrangement, she whispered. I am offering to pay your father's debts by morning, Arthur corrected. 30,000, 50,000, I don't care. It's pocket change to the duchy. I will clear your ledgers. I will put your mother in a house in Sussex, far away from you. And in return, you will stand next to me at these miserable events, wear my family jewels, and terrify anyone who tries to speak to me. And what happens behind closed doors? She asked, her voice dropping. The reality of what he was asking, what a marriage entailed, settled heavy between them. Arthur looked at her mouth, then down to the white linen clutched over her bloody heel. He reached out. His fingers were rough, calloused from dockside brawls, but his touch was shockingly light. He wrapped his hand over hers, pressing the linen firmly against the wound. Whatever you want, he said quietly. I am not Hemsley. I don't take what isn't offered. We can sleep in separate wings, or we can share a bed. The terms are yours. But there will be no pretense between us. No poetry. No lying. Beatrice looked down at his large hand covering hers. It was a lifeline thrown into a raging sea, but the rope was made of barbed wire. He was a madman. He was violent, blunt, and entirely unapologetic. But he wasn't demanding her soul. He was just demanding her presence. The clock struck midnight. I don't play the harp, Beatrice said, her voice shaking just a fraction. Arthur's mouth twitched, a slow, genuine smile breaking the harsh lines of his face. It changed him entirely. He looked younger, feral, and breathtakingly alive. Thank Christ for that, he murmured. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. Is it a deal, Beatrice? She breathed in the scent of him, the starch and the tobacco, and the sheer, solid reality of the man. She thought of the cold grate in her bedroom. She thought of the heavy, silent house in Sussex. It's a deal, Arthur. He didn't kiss her. He simply nodded, his eyes flashing with a dark, satisfied victory. He stood up, offering her his hand. Come along then, Duchess, he said. Let's go tell your mother. She's moving to the country. If you enjoyed this raw, unflinching romance, hit that like button and drop a comment below. What would you have done in Beatrice's shoes? Don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss our deep dive historical dramas. Share this video with a friend who loves their heroes, a little cynical and completely unpolished. Thanks for watching.